Chapter 47, Mount Madonna, September 2005. Reyes' new informant, Mark, confided to his handlers that he was scared. Tigre had just pulled up to his house in a red Mitsubishi convertible, bringing orders from Baby Joker. They were told to pick up money from a homeboy in Gilroy. Tigre ordered Mark to meet him before midnight in front of the Quick Stop Market. That left all afternoon for Mark's worries to build. Today I have to meet with these guys, he told his handler. He was scared that maybe the gang had figured out he was snitching, or that he was sleeping with Rosa, BJ's now ex-girlfriend. He owed BJ money. He wanted to refuse the job, but that act would guarantee he'd be killed for insubordination. He tried to calm down, reasoning that if he went to Gilroy with Tigre, there at least was the possibility he might be wrong about the gang's intentions. Maybe like most informants, he was just super paranoid. He spent the rest of the day with Rosa, then dropped her off at the Motel 6. He swung by his mom's place. He tried to snatch up one of her kitchen knives for protection, but she walked in on him, and embarrassed, he told her he was just putting it back in its place. He wanted to score a cuete, but he didn't have time. He left his body recorder at home. It would just be his luck that Tigre would choose this night to pat him down. He arrived at the Quick Stop at around 11:30 p.m. and was relieved to find that Tigre wasn't there. He was already walking away when a tan two-door sedan pulled up beside him. A homeboy was driving, and Tigre sat in the passenger seat wearing a dark hoodie. The hoodie didn't bode well. Tigre jumped out of the car, slid into the back seat, and offered the front to Mark before he could say no. Mark did as he was told, guided by some force of inevitability, because by now he was positive they planned to kill him. He chatted anxiously with Tigre. Since he didn't know the driver, some guy called Danger, they barely exchanged a word. The car climbed Hecker Pass Road toward the summit, Mark's fear elevating with each curve in the road. They reached the pass and descended Mount Madonna to Gilroy. As the road at last flattened and a few lights dotted the landscape, Mark thought perhaps he was wrong about his colleagues. Tigre's cell phone buzzed. "Who's there?" Tigre's cell phone buzzed. "Who's there?" Tigre asked the voice, which Mark decided belonged to a female. Tigre hung up and said the guy who owed the money wasn't home. He ordered Danger to turn around. As Danger pulled into a U-turn, Tigre mentioned that it wasn't smart for them to be riding around with the cuete in the car. So now Mark knew they had a gun. Had Tigre said that to spook him? Up they crawled again. They passed the last curve before the summit. When Danger pulled into a dirt patch on the shoulder, Tigre hadn't uttered a word. "I gotta take a piss," Danger said, and he stepped out and walked around the car. Tigre made no mention to get out. Mark tried to staunch his panic. "Remember when you said, if I ever needed help, you'd help me?" he pleaded. "Well, I need help now." Tigre listened but did not respond, his hooded eyes revealing nothing. Danger slipped into the back seat. Danger slipped back into the driver's seat. Tigre told Mark to get out because now he wanted to take a piss. Mark stood trembling next to the door as Tigre stood up. Then Tigre plopped back into the front seat where Mark had been. Maybe he was going to be okay. Maybe Mark had only imagined all of this. "What's up?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "You're staying here," Tigre said. Mark saw the muzzle flash and heard the bam, but never saw the gun. One of the Northern Exposure officers showed up at the morning briefing with terrible news. Their informant, Mark, was in the ICU with life-threatening gunshot wounds. Reyes felt sick. The officer said that the night before, Mark had gone up Hecker Pass with Tigre and another crew member. Someone shot Mark point blank in the chest and kept firing as he tried to run away. Someone called 911 and a paramedic took what police officers called a dying declaration at the scene. "Tony shot me," Mark wheezed before medics slid him into an ambulance. Tony the fucking tiger, Reyes thought, at the exact same fucking spot where they killed Crystal. Reyes felt like a fool for ever believing they could get enough probable cause to satisfy the feds, and his informant Mark would pay for the delays with his life. On an intellectual level, Reyes understood that the federal drug enforcement partnership had been a mismatch from the start. The one team was focused The one team was focused on violence, while the FBI wanted to go after gangs using drug conspiracy charges. The feds had their own good reasons. After Black Widow, prosecutors were shying away from RICO cases, which were fraught with all the complications that violent criminal informants bring. The Shorty and Raymond Sanchez murders drove that point home. In a drug case, you didn't have to prove murder charges, and under federal drug laws, the gangsters often got as much prison time for narcotics as they would for homicide. Drug cases were almost easier to prove. From a prosecution point of view, taking violence out of the mix made sense. It was cleaner, easier. Knowing all this did not lessen Reyes' feeling that some greater ideal had been betrayed. The one team's priority was a simple one. The team members hoped to stop the bloodbath in their backyards. Citizens lived in fear and clamored for something to be done, and it was the one officers who had heard the laments every time they ventured into the streets. Up in San Francisco and San Jose's federal buildings, the voices were lost in the din of practicality. The hit on Mark was the tipping point, the final sign that showed Reyes how things really worked. As he saw it, the Mexican-American lives lost on California's backcountry roads were of little concern in Washington or even San Francisco. Reyes wanted to put his fist through a wall, wanted to scream until he was hoarse, hurl the worst of curses at the system that allowed this bullshit to happen when it didn't have to happen, allowing a trusting man to give up his life. Reyes didn't do any of those things. Instead, he made the decision to walk away from the one sure good thing that kept him bounding out of bed in the morning. He decided to leave the task force. He told himself he had plenty of excellent reasons to run from this mess. He could no longer stand the politics, the almost daily betrayals. He told himself he couldn't take being shoved aside, or worse, shut down while he tried to do his job. That he had to leave now before he said the things he'd regret and friendships were destroyed. But in quieter moments, when his anger was spent and his mind exhausted from the rage, a more unpleasant feeling crept over him. In leaving the task force, he risked turning into someone he didn't respect. He was going back while the streets were far from safe. BJ and Tigre were out there. Bubba was out there. Baki was out there. Fuck it, he told himself. Let the FBI have them. He done his part. Thanks to the one team, the feds had the whole web, the NF family tree, the names, the numbers. Was that enough? If the FBI wanted the glory, let them finish the job. He did his best to ignore the message from Ricky and Lucio's mothers that was locked in his memory. He tried to ignore the fact that Crystal's killers had not been made to answer. He tried to ignore the certainty that he felt more bad things, more murders were going to happen while the feds took their time doing whatever the hell they did. More murders. But most of all, he tried to ignore the nagging thought that he was becoming the one thing he swore he'd never be, a cynical and bitter cop.